Have you ever been scrolling through social media, seeing people post about their weekend trips to Europe or their brand new Tesla, and wondered where exactly you fit in the grand scheme of American wealth? Maybe you're lying awake at night staring at your bank account balance, trying to figure out if you're doing better or worse than everyone else your age, or perhaps you've heard people throw around terms like middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy, but you have absolutely no idea what those actually mean in real dollar amounts. Well, today I'm going to pull back the curtain on something most Americans are completely clueless about. The actual net worth numbers that separate the upper class from the middle class from the lower class in America. And I guarantee some of these figures are going to shock you. Some might make you feel pretty good about where you stand financially, while others might be a serious wake-up call that changes how you think about money forever. My name is Nick, and I help people understand the real story behind wealth building and personal finance. If you're tired of guessing where you stand financially and want to know exactly how you compare to everyone else in America, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this information helps you out. Before we dive into these eye-opening numbers, let me ask you something. When you think about being wealthy in America, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture someone with a massive mansion, multiple luxury cars, and the ability to buy whatever they want without checking their bank account. Or maybe you think about that neighbor who seems to have everything figured out, taking multiple vacations per year and never seeming stressed about money. Here's the thing that's going to surprise you. The reality of American wealth distribution is nothing like what most people imagine. We've been conditioned by movies, social media, and our own assumptions to think wealth works one way, when the actual numbers tell a completely different story. And understanding these numbers isn't just about satisfying your curiosity, it's about giving you a clear roadmap for where you want to go financially. Think about it this way. If you're trying to get in better physical shape, wouldn't you want to know what the average person weighs or how much they exercise? If you're trying to improve your grades, wouldn't you want to know how you compare to other students? Money works exactly the same way. When you understand where you stand compared to everyone else, you can make informed decisions about your spending, saving, and investing. The most recent data from the Federal Reserve shows something that might blow your mind. The median American household net worth reached $192,900 in 2022. That's a 37% increase from 2019, which represents the largest percentage growth since the Fed started conducting these surveys in their modern format back in 1989. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something that reveals just how skewed wealth distribution really is in America. While the median net worth is around $193,000, the average net worth is over $1 million, $1.06 million to be exact. Think about what that means for a second. The average is more than 5 times higher than the median. That's like saying half of all people are shorter than 5 feet 6 inches, but the average height is over 8 feet tall. It doesn't make mathematical sense unless you have some extremely tall people pulling that average way up. And that's exactly what's happening with wealth in America. The concentration of wealth at the very top is so extreme that it completely distorts the averages. According to the latest data, the top 1% of households hold almost 32% of all wealth in the United States. Let me put that in perspective. 1 out of every 100 families controls nearly 1/3 of everything valuable in the entire country. That's like 3 people at a 100-person party owning 32% of all the pizza, drinks, and everything else combined. This wealth concentration creates distinct tiers that separate American households into clearly defined economic classes. And these aren't just abstract categories that economists made up to sound smart. These are real financial boundaries that determine everything from where you can afford to live to what opportunities are available to your children. So let's break down exactly what net worth puts you in each class, starting from the bottom and working our way up. And fair warning, some of these numbers might make you realize you're in a different class than you thought you were. The lower class, sometimes called the poverty class, represents Americans with the most limited financial resources. If your net worth falls between $0 and $16,900, you're technically in the lower class according to the latest Federal Reserve data. The median net worth for this group is just over $6,000. $6,000, that's less than what many people spend on a single vacation or a decent used car. Now, before you start feeling sorry for everyone in this category, remember that net worth includes people of all ages and life circumstances. A 22-year-old recent college graduate who just landed their first job might have a negative net worth due to student loans, but they're obviously not destined to stay in the lower class forever. Same goes for someone who just went through a divorce or dealt with major medical expenses. Life happens, and net worth can fluctuate dramatically based on timing and circumstances. But what characterizes the lower class isn't just the low net worth numbers. It's the financial behaviors and constraints that come with having limited resources. People in this category often live paycheck to paycheck, have little to no emergency savings, and struggle to access traditional forms of credit. When unexpected expenses arise, they might be forced to rely on high-interest payday loans or credit cards, which only makes their financial situation worse over time. The harsh reality is that when you have limited financial resources, everything costs more. You can't buy in bulk to save money. You can't put down large deposits to get better rates on utilities or housing. You might not qualify for the best interest rates on loans, assuming you can get approved for loans at all. It's expensive to be poor in America, which makes climbing out of the lower class particularly challenging. Moving up the ladder, we get to the lower middle class, which encompasses net worth between $16,900 and $43,000, $1,760. The median net worth for this group is around $61,260. This might sound like a significant jump from the lower class, and in many ways it is, but the lower middle class faces its own unique set of challenges. People in this category often include skilled workers, technicians, service industry employees, and others who have steady employment but limited opportunities for significant wealth accumulation. They might own modest homes, have some retirement savings through employer-sponsored plans, and maintain basic emergency funds, but they're still vulnerable to economic shocks like job loss or major medical expenses. Here's what makes the lower middle class particularly interesting from a policy perspective. They often earn too much to qualify for government assistance programs, but not enough to feel financially secure. They're caught in this middle ground where they have to be incredibly strategic about every financial decision because there's not much room for error. The true middle class, often considered the backbone of the American economy, has net worth ranging from $58,550 to $169,420. The median net worth for this class sits at $145,200. Now, this is where things get really interesting because the middle class represents what most Americans consider the standard for financial success. These are the households that have managed to achieve the traditional markers of the American dream. They typically own their homes, have established retirement accounts, can afford modest vacations, and have enough financial stability to weather minor economic disruptions without falling into debt. But even within the middle class, there's significant variation in financial security and lifestyle. Someone at the lower end of the middle class range might still feel financial pressure and need to be careful about major purchases. Meanwhile, someone at the upper end might feel quite comfortable and have multiple investment accounts beyond their basic retirement savings. What unites the middle class is their ability to plan for the future while meeting their current needs. They're not just surviving paycheck to paycheck, but they're also not wealthy enough to stop thinking about money altogether. They represent that sweet spot where financial discipline and smart planning can lead to genuine wealth accumulation over time. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating because we haven't even talked about the upper middle class yet, and that's where the numbers start to get really surprising. The upper middle class, also known as the mass affluent, is where things start to get really interesting from a wealth perspective. If you have a net worth between $500,000 and $2 million, congratulations, you've officially entered the upper middle class club. And honestly, this is where a lot of people start to feel like they're actually wealthy, even though they're still technically not considered rich by American standards. Now, here's something that might surprise you about the upper middle class. Many of these households are what financial planners call HENRYs. That stands for high earners, not rich yet. And yes, that's actually a real term that financial professionals use with a straight face. Imagine walking into a bank and having someone tell you that you're a Henry. It sounds like something you'd call your uncle, who still thinks flip phones are cutting edge technology. But jokes aside, Henrys represent a fascinating group in American wealth distribution. These are typically households earning somewhere north of $140,000 annually. They're doctors, lawyers, engineers, successful business managers, and other professionals who have leveraged their education and skills into high-paying careers. They live in nice neighborhoods, send their kids to good schools, and can afford to max out their retirement accounts without breaking a sweat. Yet many people in the upper middle class don't actually feel wealthy at all. And that's because of something economists call lifestyle inflation. As their incomes increased over the years, so did their expenses. The modest apartment became a nice house. The reliable used car became a luxury SUV. The occasional dinner out became regular fine dining experiences. Before they knew it, they were earning 3 times what they made a decade ago, but somehow still felt like they were living paycheck to paycheck. This is actually one of the most common financial traps in America. People assume that earning more money automatically means having more money, but that's only true if you don't increase your spending proportionally. The upper middle class often falls into this trap because they can afford lifestyle upgrades that make them feel successful, but those same upgrades prevent them from building wealth as quickly as they could. Here's something else that characterizes the upper middle class. They're often heavily invested in real estate, both as their primary residence and as investment properties. Real estate becomes a common wealth building strategy for this group because it provides both property appreciation and potential rental income. They understand that their high incomes put them in higher tax brackets, so they look for investments that offer tax advantages. But the upper middle class also faces unique challenges that lower income groups don't have to worry about. They often don't qualify for any government assistance programs, even during economic hardships. They pay higher tax rates on their income, and they're expected to fund their own retirement entirely since Social Security will only replace a small percentage of their pre-retirement income. Moving beyond the upper middle class, we enter what most people would consider truly wealthy territory. The upper class starts at a net worth of around $2.65 million, but even within the upper class, there are dramatic variations that most people don't understand. If you have a net worth between $2.65 million and about $5.8 million, you're in the lower tier of the upper class. You're definitely wealthy by any reasonable standard, but you're not necessarily living the lifestyle that most people associate with being rich. You might have a nice house in an expensive neighborhood, luxury cars, and the ability to travel extensively, but you're probably still working, still thinking about money, and still making financial decisions based on your budget, even if that budget is much larger than most people's. The real separation in American wealth happens when we start talking about the top 1%, and this is where the numbers get absolutely mind-blowing. According to the most recent data, you need a net worth of at least $5.8 million to crack the top 1% of American households. But here's where it gets complicated, because different sources give different estimates for this threshold. Some financial institutions put the top 1% threshold at nearly $12 million in net worth. Others suggest it's closer to $10 million. The variation exists because measuring extreme wealth is incredibly difficult. When someone has hundreds of millions or billions in assets, those numbers can fluctuate dramatically based on market conditions, making it hard to pin down exact thresholds. But regardless of the precise number, reaching the top 1% means you've achieved a level of financial success that's almost incomprehensible to most Americans. You're not just wealthy, you're wealthy enough that your money makes more money than most people earn at their jobs, your investment returns alone could fund a comfortable middle-class lifestyle for multiple families. And then there's the top 0.1%, which requires a net worth of approximately $62 million. These are the people who own or have founded successful businesses, inherited substantial family wealth, or made extremely successful high-risk investments. They have access to investment opportunities that regular wealthy people don't even know exist. Private equity, venture capital, hedge funds, and other exclusive investment vehicles that require minimum investments in the millions. What's fascinating about American wealth distribution is how quickly the numbers escalate as you move up the ladder. The difference between middle class and upper middle class is a few $100,000, but the difference between upper class and top 1% is millions, and the difference between top 1% and top 0.1% is tens of millions. This creates a situation where even wealthy people can feel financially insecure when they compare themselves to those above them. Someone with a $5 million net worth might feel rich until they spend time around people with $50 million net worths. It's all about perspective and social comparison. But here's something that might change how you think about all of these numbers. Geographic location dramatically impacts what these wealth levels actually mean for your lifestyle. What puts you in the upper class in Jackson, Tennessee might only get you to middle class in San Francisco or New York City. The cost of living variations across America are so extreme that they essentially create different economic realities in different regions. In Connecticut, you need to earn over $1 million annually just to crack the top 1% of earners in that state. But in West Virginia, the threshold for the top 1% is only around $416,000 annually. This means that someone with a $2 million net worth might live like royalty in a small Midwest town with a massive house, luxury cars, and the ability to afford anything they want locally. But that same $2 million in Manhattan might get you a modest apartment and a comfortable but not extravagant lifestyle. Understanding these geographic variations is crucial for making smart financial decisions. Some people spend their entire careers chasing higher salaries in expensive cities, not realizing that they might actually improve their standard of living by earning less money in a lower cost area. Others stay in expensive areas because they love the lifestyle and opportunities, even though it means they'll need to accumulate significantly more wealth to achieve the same level of financial security. So where does all of this leave you? Whether you're looking at these numbers and feeling encouraged about your progress or realizing you have more work to do than you thought, the most important thing is understanding that these categories aren't permanent destinations. People move between these wealth categories all the time, and the factors that determine which direction they move are often more within their control than they realize. The difference between staying stuck in one class versus climbing to the next often comes down to a handful of key financial behaviors that anyone can learn and implement. The first behavior that separates wealth builders from everyone else is understanding the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy. This might sound obvious, but it's probably the most common mistake Americans make with money. Social media has created this culture where everyone's trying to project success through their purchases. People finance luxury cars they can't afford, buy houses that stretch their budgets to the breaking point, and rack up credit card debt funding lifestyles that look impressive but actually prevent them from building real wealth. Meanwhile, many genuinely wealthy people drive modest cars, live in reasonable houses, and spend money in ways that would surprise you. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. That house is now worth around $650,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize the guy is worth over $100 billion. He could literally buy a different mansion every day of the year and not notice the financial impact. The point isn't that you should live like Warren Buffett because, let's be honest, most of us enjoy spending money on things we like. The point is that wealthy people understand the opportunity cost of their purchases. When they buy something expensive, they're not just thinking about whether they can afford the monthly payment, they're thinking about what that money could have grown into if they had invested it instead. So there you have it. The real numbers that define American wealth classes, from the lower class at $6,000 to the top 0.1% at $62 million and beyond. Whether you're celebrating or having an existential crisis right about now, remember that these categories are just snapshots in time, not life sentences. The wealthy didn't get there by accident, and neither will you. If this breakdown helped clarify where you stand and where you want to go, smash that subscribe button and check out my video on the biggest money mistakes that keep people stuck in the wrong wealth class forever.